Sandy, welcome to Halloween Daily. Thank you so much for hanging out and talking to us today.
Oh, my pleasure. You guys are some of my favorites. I follow you all the time.
Oh, I love hearing that. I love hearing that. And of course, I'm not shy about saying I'm a huge fan, and some of the movies you've produced over the years are some of my all-time favorites. And of course, we've loved watching and covering you, pardon the pun, but taking the comics world by storm with Storm King over the last decade. And I was thinking about it preparing for this interview. I love how you're so open and always diving into different mediums, whether it's been film and of course comics, and there's been podcasts and documentaries, and now we're here talking about Suburban Screams, which is another medium, a streaming series. So I guess I'll start there, and you have worked in so many different mediums. Um, how do you go about finding the right medium and knowing that this is the right medium for this particular story that we're going to tell?
I'd love to say I'm a great pre-planner and stuff. I just open, if a door opens, I get curious and walk through it. It's
Mhm.
really just a matter of thinking something sounds cool.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm not a particularly um, calculating person. I mean, when this presented itself, uh, John and I thought about it and went, well, that sounds interesting. We've never done something like that. We've been presented with reality shows before, but they were all kind of hokey.
Hmm.
This seemed interesting to do a hybrid, scripted and unscripted. And it was something that we felt we could be value added to. Um, and then we felt we could move it around a bit, and our spin on it was to focus on survivors and victims. There's a lot done about the murders, the rapists, all that kind of stuff, and solving crimes. But very few people talk about the survivors and what they live with then after supposedly the case is closed and there's closure and all that. For those people, there's never an end. You're forever affected by what you've experienced. Whether it's a town that's been victimized, like in Pennsylvania with the latest serial killer that escaped for 2 weeks and held them hostage, basically. Those people are never going to look at their safe town the same way again. Or someone who's been stalked and is still being stalked. That never ends for her. 6 years. So what happens to people and how are they affected was far more interesting to us than the event itself. And I feel like that's what we were able to bring to this. And by adding the scripted portion, we were able to make it a more immersive experience for the viewer and have them more in that world with the person who experienced it, as opposed to making up other stuff.
And I have been lucky enough to watch a few of the episodes, and yeah, I mean, I think just what you said, it is immersive in that there are the cinematic, retelling portions, and then it also has that true crime kind of documentary angle of it too, that you're talking about, where you're interviewing the actual people, and in many cases the survivors of these incidents. And it is very effective like that, and I really enjoyed the episodes. um Now it's Suburban Screams, and as John says in the opening narration, it's about kind of these horrors that are happening, these true stories that are happening in seemingly otherwise idyllic, kind of picturesque neighborhoods. And was that always? I mean, was that always part of this project, or was
Yes.
that part of what attracted you guys to it as well?
Sure. If you go down dark alleys and tunnels and dangerous places, you're not nearly as, I mean, you predict something's going to jump out and kill you. If you are in a safe place like Haddonfield, you don't expect to be murdered.
Right.
You don't expect to have bad things happen to you. You don't expect to see the man next door go crazy with an axe. So it's a lot more jarring. And for us as viewers, it's a lot more fun to get scared by your next door neighbor. Why do you think people do these great vignettes on Halloween in their front yards of grisly hands coming out of graves and bodies hanging from the tree? Because they want to transform the mundane into something horrifying. Well, what would happen if that really happened in your neighborhood? And for these people, it did. So, and if we have a chance at a second season, I would, really hunt for more of those kinds of stories that next door had, more dangerous things.
Well, it is terrifying to know that that's happening, but like you said, it is happening. And now, of course, John directed one of the episodes. Yep. I'm curious, did you have to twist his arm at all, or was he kind of fired up to do that?
He thought it was fun, particularly since, he was in the middle of recording a couple of albums. And so he couldn't travel to where we were shooting in the Czech Republic. The timing didn't work out. So he directed remotely. And when he found out that he could do that, and we had a great setup going where we were really pretty flawlessly able for him to talk to the crew, talk to the actors, and do that, and then watch the multiple camera setups on a giant screen. Yeah. He was more excited that he was able to juggle it all with the schedule. And then I was in the Czech Republic, being his eyes and ears on the ground and scouting the locations and stuff. So he actually really liked the premise of The Phone Stalker, and the chance to do a really more of a slow burn suspense episode that leaves you still with her in limbo. I think that's what really appealed to him about it. As soon as he saw that script, he wanted to do it.
And you mentioned leaving her in limbo. I mean, there is that unsolved mystery aspect of this series, I feel like, too. Was that part of your thinking too, that maybe some of these mysteries could be solved, or some of these people could be found or brought to light?
No, I think for most of them, they are what they are. They've, the events have happened. And like I said, for the idea is most people think they're solved, but this is what remains behind. And so I thought that was a pretty interesting notion.
I guess you're right, like you said, because for most people it is a closed case, but these are the stories that for them it never does end, and it never is closed. I think you're exactly right with that. And especially with John's episode, the music is a big aspect, and it did kind of feel like a John Carpenter, short film, just having his music, and of course with Cody and Daniel. And they do the music for the series. So can you, was that always a decision, or was that a big discussion for you guys, or was that just an easy, like, well, of course that will do the music?
It, it became a big debate because the studio or the network, started messing around legally and stuff. And finally I just said, look, your fans are going to want to hear your music, at least on your episode. So just do it, and who cares? So for his episode, we knew that was integral. Yeah. And then the title track was always a plan.
Awesome. And we did just see John a few days ago in Pasadena. He talked a little bit about the series, and like you mentioned, shooting remotely for the first time. So kind of a big historical moment here for you guys, a new medium and a new way
Yep.
for John to direct. I think his fans, I haven't seen the episode, I think they're gonna really dig it.
I hope so. I hope so. The idea is always to do the best we can to make that fan base work. And then of course we're barging into the Peacock's fan base, which is a totally different fan base. So, that we make them nervous because we're going, okay, horror, and they're going, oh, but be careful. We're like, yeah, we can't really be that careful. So,
well, yeah, and I guess we'll point that out too. It is, a more harder edged, R-rated. Like if you think of like the old Unsolved Mysteries series, I would say this is kind of like that, but a little more Carpenter King R-rated.
Yeah, well, if you have our names on it, our fans have a certain expectation. But also, come on, guys, there's people being victimized. So, you can't really sugarcoat it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I think fans are going to love it. I've loved what I've watched so far. And before we go, if you'll indulge us a little bit, being Halloween Daily News, we always try to talk a little bit about the Halloween holiday itself. And I know you obviously would have a unique point of view on the holiday today. But I'm wondering, before we get to there, even do you have memories growing up of, did your family celebrate the holiday? Do you have fond memories of growing up and trick-or-treating and celebrating Halloween?
Oh yeah. We had, it was all homemade costumes. And then I had a neighbor who, like, we would go out. Our favorite one was my dad and my mom would make this big giraffe costume. And, it was chicken wire and all this stuff and then covered in fabric. And each year we would rotate being the front or the back. And we had a big bag around its neck, and we'd go do a dance door to door and for our Halloween candy. But the Halloween costumes every year were elaborate, and then we would, go hit the houses. Big deal. And then, as a mom, I made all the Halloween costumes. And there was a rule: you couldn't rely on our friends, the effects guys, to do your stuff, because I thought that was cheating. That was being a little too stuck up. And there was one year that was an exception where Greg Nicotero found out that Cody really wanted to be the fly, and he, on the sly, made him a fly head. And I think that was when Cody was around 10 or 11. So I kind of went, yeah, okay, that's a little too cool, and yes, you can have it. But we did all kinds of stuff like that. And when the kids were growing up, Halloween was always a big deal. Mm-hmm. And we always, I sewed my brains out with every kind of Halloween.
That sounds amazing to me. And I love the homemade aspect.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah, there's not enough of that now. So to fast forward to today, just to give our viewers an idea, what's Halloween like at Sandy and John's house? Are you guys counting the Michael Myers trick-or-treaters that come to the door?
He knows where we are. Generally, well, on a bunch of the Halloweens, John's been out on tour. So those years were generally not around, but most of the years our office is in a residential area. So I will, the front yard's decorated with hanging bodies and everything else. And it kind of brought that neighborhood together, because that neighborhood figured out where John's office was. And shortly after we moved in, it was Halloween, and everybody coming to the door for the trick-or-treaters, because I'll hand out candy there because it's a flatter area and there's kids and stuff. The adults would say, "Oh, hi, happy Halloween." And so I started a tradition of, I have a full bar and the parents come in, and I serve drinks and there's candy and that kind of stuff. And then I started a deal where there's a pot of chili on the stove, and so the neighbors come in and the kids get candy and that kind of stuff. But in general, people don't know where we are, because that would be chaos.
Yeah, I guess it would be if they knew where they were going. But that sounds like a perfect Halloween night at y'all's house.
It's really old fashioned. It's
Yeah.
very old fashioned. There's been a couple of times where some kids, older kids being Michael Myers, have come by, and I've tried to figure out how to sneak some uniquely only available from us things into their bags so that they wouldn't know where they got it. But it's difficult to do.
Yeah. Oh man, I bet there's been some interesting Michael Myers trick-or-treaters over the years. Well, I know you're busy today, and I cannot thank you enough for hanging out and talking to us. Hopefully it won't be the last time. This has just been an absolute pleasure, and I know everybody's going to look forward to watching Suburban Screams.
Oh, thank you. It's great to see you.
And happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween to you too.